Not going to accept anything other than what we put. I would suggest that McCarthy not meet until he put something in writing. His words have no meaning. Put it in writing, and if it's anything less, we're not going to accept it.
You don't think he's going to make any changes in a compromise with the White House?
We have a winning hand.
We saw there were members of the House Freedom Caucus, Ralph Norman, Bill Good, saying these negotiations with Biden, you can't trust him. Like, what's the point? Why are we doing this? We've got a winning hand. They are obviously feeling like they're in a very strong position, or at least that it is advantageous for them to project that they feel that they're in a very strong position right now. The caucus as a whole, by the way, put out sort of a warning saying no more discussion on watering it down, all of these negotiations, the bill, the compromises, period. And so we are at a bit of an impasse because on the Senate side, on the Democratic side, Chuck Schumer says that the House bill is dead on arrival. That's the one, of course, that would raise the debt ceiling, but would also cut spending by $4.8 trillion. And we came into this morning with both Biden and Kevin McCarthy saying that the conversation is still ongoing. They see sort of a structure, a path ahead. But as of when we're about to begin the show today, Republican negotiators apparently walked out of the room where negotiations were happening and blamed the White House for holding up discussions. We don't know a lot yet about what happened in that room, but we do have a couple of statements from Representative Garrett Graves. He says, until people are willing to have reasonable conversations about how you can actually move forward and do the right thing, then we're not gonna sit here and talk to ourselves. We decided to press pause because it's just not productive. Bear in mind, look, we've done a lot of coverage about what it is that they're asking for, and we will continue to update that because they keep adding new things to it. In fact, we have a little bit coming up later on in the show. But they are not only just freezing government spending, they're dialing it back to the previous year's spending, significant cuts across the board. And if it seems weird to you that they're so willing to let this entire thing just blow up, well, I mean, they don't want even the limited spending to go through. They want to cut all of these programs to the bone. And so we'll see what ends up happening, perhaps over the weekend, perhaps cruising into next week, but we do seem to have hit a little bit of a rough patch.
Yeah, so it might surprise you to find out that I agree with both of the Republican congressmen in part. So the first guy said, put it in writing, otherwise it doesn't mean anything. That is correct. That is actually correct political strategy. Perhaps Representative Jayapal could learn a thing or two from that. When her earlier strategy was do not put anything in writing, just go with the strategy, and this is a literal quote, trust Biden. That was the name of the strategy, and Biden, of course, screwed progressives and gave them none of what they wanted, and not getting it in writing was a disaster. And so here is the Freedom Caucus playing correct politics. We draw the line, and we stick to our position. The other side is super weak / agrees with us, and we all know it. So you just stay in this position and Biden will give you everything you want. The progressives had the 100% wrong strategy, which is, I don't know, forget our agenda, just whatever you want, Biden. Okay, oh, you and Manchin are gonna give it to us later. Did they? Did they? Was that a good strategy? So I'm not talking about policy. On policy, the Republicans are 100% wrong, but on politics, that is correct. The second guy said, we have a winning hand. Now, why would they have a winning hand? Biden could at any moment say, use the 14th Amendment that very clearly says that he can do this. He can raise the debt limit, okay? So this is a nonsense conversation in the first place. Imagine theater. The Democrats have agreed to this theater because they also want to cut spending. It's super obvious. And on top of that, they're saying, the Republicans are, oh yeah, we'll crash the American economy. Well, any politician that isn't brain dead would say, go for it, big guy. See how it turns out for you. Remember when Bill Clinton said to Newt Gingrich, go for it, shut the government down, let's see how it turns out for you. And it turned into an absolute disaster for the Republicans. The same thing would happen here, but Biden is a Republican. He is a Republican on these issues. There's no reason in the world to offer any of these cuts, let alone the drastic cuts, except for the fact that he agrees with them. But not one mainstream media reporter in the entire country has written the possibility that Biden, who has offered those same cuts throughout the entirety of his career, he's offered these kind of cuts dozens of times in his career. It has not occurred to a single national reporter that maybe he wants the cuts. And that's why he's, oh golly gee, I have such a weak hand. Do I have to give the Republicans everything again? It's only the 20th time in a row. But hey, listen, you national reporters, shut up and write my propaganda, which is that, oh, there's nothing I could do. There's nothing I can do. There's a million things you can do. Here's one last one. This is now like eighth on the list, right? He can just say 14th Amendment, I'm done with this conversation. But at a bare minimum, that would lift the debt ceiling and they would go to the courts and the courts would take about a year to decide it. At a bare minimum, and the courts would have to say it's a political decision. But that's so easy, all that is super easy. But the eighth priority could be like, oh, you know what, guys? 76% of Americans want tax increases on the rich. 3/4 of the country, including a majority of Republican voters. You see me criticize Republican voters all the time. Here the Republican voters are correct. The majority of them also want tax increases on the rich. Increases. They're not getting $1 of that in this so-called compromise or whatever the hell they're calling this load of crap. Why? Because Biden doesn't want tax increases on the rich, because all of his donors are the rich. But this hasn't occurred to a single national reporter covering politics in America. Not one of them. Oh, come on, man. Look, there's 1,000 stories just in today's news. As I read it, I was like, oh, I forgot. People actually believe this crap. No, it's all propaganda. Mainstream media just does marketing for corporate rule. They're not at all in the news business. It's outrageous that they foist this theater upon you and go along with the charade of the Democrats and the Republicans with their good cop, bad cop strategy. All of this is crap. Max.
I just can't get over those clips you showed. I mean, I think it shows a Republican Party completely disconnected from reality. I mean, we have a winning hand. Are you serious? Kevin McCarthy's debt deal is hanging by a single Republican vote. You've got George Santos, who's about to rent a seat at Rikers. You have one congressman who's saying in public that Kevin McCarthy's word is worthless to him. And a party where the hardliners don't want any talk about raising taxes or cutting loopholes, and some moderate Republicans won't vote for it if they don't. So forget negotiating with Joe Biden. I'll be amazed if Kevin McCarthy can actually get this deal through his own caucus. I mean, it would be fitting, though, if the only way we get to actually raising taxes on the rich is the complete collapse of the GOP, essentially forcing Biden to do it with no other option.
He won't.
That's about how hard we'd have to drag him there.
There's no way that Biden will increase taxes on the rich. He won't do it. If the Republicans said, yeah, we're okay with it, go ahead. He'd be like, oh, the postman said I couldn't do it. I found someone, the parliamentarian.
I fell off my bike.
The DoorDash driver said I couldn't do it. I said, golly gee, only 3/4 of Americans want it? I couldn't find a way to do it. They're liars, total and utter liars. And the tough guys in the fourth estate haven't figured out that maybe politicians might be lying to them. Yeah, as Max pointed out, the Republicans in reality have the weakest hand I have ever seen. But not just Biden, everyone in Washington is pretending that they have a super strong hand and that Biden is forced to negotiate with them and give them everything they want.
Let me throw out just a couple of things, and then I want to ask both of you a question before we move on to possibly the best story of the show. I do want to add more of the Republicans are now pushing for some sort of big border crackdown to be a part of this bill, because obviously, how could you pay off your country's debts without doing something about the border? I don't know. That's what they're saying. I know that it doesn't matter. I know that nobody cares about what's true or whatever. And I'm sure at some point we have covered this on TYT, but I just looked up previous raises to the debt ceiling. Did you know Ronald Reagan raised it 18 times? That is crazy. Donald Trump raised it twice and suspended it twice while adding over $7 trillion to the debt. And that is just amazing. By the way, Barack Obama had to raise it 7 times. And I really just wish, I know that they won't. You've sort of sketched out why having this sort of constant crisis is a good thing for both the Republicans and the Democrats. But this is like theoretically bad for Biden right now because the Republicans can hold it hostage. But it's also theoretically bad for whoever, President Carlson next time around, because the Democrats could hold it hostage. In theory, for the proper functioning of government, you'd want to get rid of this. But again, if you don't want government to really function, if you want to be able to set aside several months a year to just debating this sort of thing and using it as an excuse to constantly cut spending, then it's useful to have an inherently broken system. But that said, this new push to get Biden to use the 14th Amendment to make sure that the debt ceiling is raised has received some strong pushback from a completely unbiased party, the Chamber of Commerce. They warned that there would be potentially disastrous economic effects if he were to use the 14th Amendment to avoid the country defaulting on its debts. And that is at least mildly interesting, because one would think that a business lobbying group would be least interested in the global economy being destroyed, but here is their argument. It is the Chamber's view that attempting to invoke so-called powers under the 14th Amendment would be as economically calamitous as a default triggered by a failure to lift the debt limit in a timely manner. And by the way, one of the argument that he gives, I think it's maybe worthy of discussion, is that sure, he could use it, he could raise the debt ceiling, but that would at least have some sort of legal challenge to it, which would take time. And what if the SCOTUS says you can't raise it while we're waiting for the adjudication, and thus we pass the X date? Then, okay, theoretically, I guess that could be a problem. It doesn't seem like an unavoidable one, but it's potentially a problem. But to be fair, that is not the case that Neil Bradley is making, the chief policy officer for the Chamber of Commerce. He's not just saying, I don't support it because there isn't time. He also says they don't have the power. So like one of the head guys at one of the head business lobbying groups wants this sword to continue hanging over the neck of American democracy.
So think about why, guys. But John's of course right. Chamber of Commerce represents business interests. If we don't lift the debt ceiling, then the market crashes, the economy crashes. It's the last thing Chamber of Commerce wants. So why are they saying that to take away a tool from Biden making sure that the debt ceiling is lifted? It's because they know with absolute certainty that this is theater. They know with absolute certainty that the Republicans and Democrats are bought because they're the ones who bought them. If they thought there was any chance that they are not going to lift the debt ceiling, they would never be in favor of taking away the 14th Amendment as a tool in this case. Never. They know with more certainty than anyone else that they're never gonna do it. It's just an excuse to cut spending and make sure all of the money goes to business interests. But not a single national media reporter has figured it out, right? Yep. So guys, we live in totally different realities. We don't have to discuss the right-wing reality with all the doctors are wrong, all the scientists are wrong, there was no racism in America. Like you don't have to, we know about their alternate reality, that's well known. But mainstream media and everyone in Washington lives in a completely different reality than the rest of us. Because like sometimes I'll say these things on social media and everyone who's under 35 will say, Cenk, that's so obvious. Why would you bother stating that the Democrats and Republicans are engaging in theater, and of course they could lift the debt ceiling at any time, and the Democrats just want to do the same cuts? That's so obvious. Did you just catch on to that? And everybody in Washington would be like, you think the Democrats also want to do the cuts? No, that sounds crazy. They haven't even thought of it. They haven't, again, not one article on it. That's amazing, isn't it amazing? At a bare minimum, no matter who's right or wrong, it's amazing that we live in three completely different realities, all in the same country.
Yeah. It's almost enough to make you think that the people who own the media companies also want the cuts to happen.
No, really? Are they? Why, John? Are they multi-billion-dollar corporations?
I'm gonna look into
who also would gain billions of dollars from these tax cuts? Huh? And they want to protect those by making sure that we get the money instead from payments that would go to the average American, an average American that they couldn't give a rat's ass about. And instead they want to protect their interests? Sounds like a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
I once had a reporter tell me, are you saying that these multi-billion-dollar media corporations are interested in profit? Yeah, I am saying that.
It's the playing pretend that really does make your nose bleed. I mean, there are solutions for this debt ceiling problem, and Democrats don't want to use one, the 14th Amendment, and Republicans on the Supreme Court are getting ready to take away another one. When they overrule Chevron, you won't be able to give this to a nonpartisan person or put it with the Federal Reserve to deal with it. They want this tool to stay there so they can keep this drama going. It works for the people in power, even if it doesn't work for us. And that's what no one wants to say out loud.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.